Welcome to this public meeting of the Board of Trustees of the Palo Alto Unified School District. The board met in closed session, just returned a few minutes ago. And in closed session, the board voted 5-0 to approve the employee settlement agreement with employee number HR 1025-2022-1022. We can only use ones and twos in these employee numbers. The next item on our agenda is approval of the agenda order. Is there a motion?
So moved.
A second.
A student preferential vote?
Aye.
Board members, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? The agenda order is adopted. The next item on our agenda is the report of student board members. Ms. Sia?
Awesome, thank you. Hello, everyone. As you can see, unfortunately, the gun board rep, Daniel Pan, is out sick, so he will not be able to join us today, and I will be reading the gun report tonight. I know a lot has happened, so I'm hoping to do it justice. Gun had their Hoka week last week, with the theme being Gun Inc. On the first day of school, students came to campus decked out in their class colors for their cafeteria day. Yellow for freshmen as banana cream pie, green for sophomores as Caesar salad, black for juniors as blackberry jam, and red for seniors as salsa. Students huddled together on the senior quad for Stuff a Square and faced off in tug-of-war on the football field. For Tuesday's company retreat theme, students came as cowboys, pirates, lifeguards, and Pally seniors. Well, they wore camo, and participated in games such as balloon stomp and obstacle course. On Wednesday, freshmen took a surprising victory, beating the seniors in the basketball game of Shooting Stars. And Gun held their first ever esports Smash of the Titans during their prime, where two students from each grade faced off in a game of Super Smash Bros. The seniors reigned victorious, and the event, from what I know, was a smashing success. Shout out to those involved in planning the event, being Jerome, Michael, Miley, Lucy, and Kevin, all on SEC. Thursday upped up the hype with the traditional pool game and ended the night with their night rally in the Titan Gym. At least from a judging perspective, since 10 ASB members got invited to evaluate, I thought the air band's dances were just incredible. There were glow sticks, lights, cheers, spirit, and of course, amazing dance moves. The seniors claimed first place, bringing in their experience and energy, even having a throwback to High School Musical with We're All in This Together. At the night rally, the winners of the homecoming acting competition were also announced, with Travis and Abby winning free tickets, stuffed animals, and disposable cameras. Throughout the week, Gun students also got to marvel at their amazing class floats. Freshmen built an office-themed float on the freshman quad for Gun Inc., complete with a photo op. Sophomores represented their SpongeBob theme with their float outside the Spanghammer Theater, which even had a golf course and a pineapple house that you could walk through, as a callback to their golf day dress-up. The juniors built their San Francisco float on the top steps of the N building, which featured the Golden Gate Bridge, Lombard Street, the painted ladies, tie-dye, and rainbow colors to represent their San Francisco dress-up theme. Finally, the seniors built the Apollo 11 lunar lander in the center of the N building, inspired by the USA dress-up themes. The float included a motorized hatch that opened periodically and also had a monitor with videos of the original moon landing, and was surrounded by planets and a backdrop of the moon with the 2023 flag. Props to all of the hardworking students who worked on these floats. I was truly blown away seeing all these amazing structures. Gun finished off their homecoming week with their Friday homecoming football game against Cupertino, with the theme being Pink Out for breast cancer awareness. The Hogo Court, a group of 10 recognized Gun seniors, were all celebrated at the football game. Congratulations to all the homecoming court winners. They all looked fabulous, I might add. The senior class did indeed reign victorious at the end of Hoka Week with 16,900 points. Congrats to the Gun seniors. Lastly, Gun held their Gone Abroad homecoming dance in the Titan Gym on Saturday. I actually got the chance to attend, and it was definitely a great experience, with Dippin' Dots, flashing lights, games like Giant Jenga, Connect 4, and Ping Pong, and of course, throwback tunes to dance to. It was super fun, and from what I got to see, it was a really exciting week. Daniel actually gave me a quote to add, just so you would get something from his perspective. He said that there is just something really special about being a senior and cheering with your friends because you know everyone from your class. It's just so unifying that everyone's so connected with one another. I love Hogo. As for Pally, ASB has been getting back into more activity post-Spirit Week. We had Unity Day last Wednesday, where students got a chance to write affirmations on our Unity Day poster and do rock painting in the Wellness Center. We held class council meetings for all of our classes, just so class officers could plan out their events with their peers. And 10 of our ASB members, as I said before, got the honor to help judge air bands, along with some board members as well. For my first time seeing air bands indoors, it was a great experience with spirits and glow sticks, and it was just marvelous. For upcoming ASB events, we are having Spookside Lands, which is a Halloween-themed outdoor concert featuring student acts, and it'll be this Thursday and Friday. While we usually have Quadside Lands, our quad is unfortunately non-existent due to construction, so we are hosting this in its place on the Centennial Plaza. Seniors are hosting pumpkin painting on Friday to match the Halloween spirit, and on Halloween on Monday, Pally is hosting a costume contest and lunchtime trick-or-treating. Our Wellness and Diversity Commissioner will be holding the first cultural committee meeting tomorrow for Pally's culture clubs. I and other site council members are also planning for the Q2 Town Hall, which will center on mental health and wellness to take in student input and take place in November. For other activities, we had our Latinos Unidos celebration on Friday, October 14th, complete with games, tables, and sweet treats. Campanile and Viking released their first issue a few weeks ago, Sayoli held team selections, and Pally Debate brought home wild cards, meaning automatic entry to the state qualifiers from the CFL 1 tournament. Pally's Community Club, which hosts leaders and activists to speak on Pally campus, will be inviting Miss California, Catherine Liang, to speak tomorrow in the MAC. Lastly, TEDx Pally will also take place tomorrow during Prime. Looking into our visual and performing arts, Pally Jazz and Orchestra held their concert on October 13th, and Pally Choir performed in their fall concert last Friday. Theater did load-in for Radium Girls last Saturday, and opening night will be Friday, November 4th. You can buy tickets now for Radium Girls on pallytheater.com. I just have to plug. Finally, as fall athletic season wraps up, Pally Sports have been celebrating their seniors at their senior nights. Volleyball specifically had their senior night yesterday, where seniors gave out and received flowers, all while winning their game against Monte Vista. I wanted to end this very long report by wishing Miss Brown a happy birthday, and that's all from me. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next item on our agenda is the Superintendent of Schools report, Dr. Austin.
All right, thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank Jung Che and her team in their work with the Seal of Civic Engagement. We just received notice recently that we're being recognized from Santa Clara County as the exemplary program in our county, which is not a surprise given her efforts and the success of our students in obtaining those seals. We're also excited because that aligns with one of our priority goals of serving others, so it's not a one-off. Spent quite a bit of time since our last meeting doing classroom visits, and just have to highlight one. I spent some time over at Hoover, walking around with Mr. Sherman, and Mr. Moore went with me, and while we were there, in not a very long period of time, we saw our PE teacher, and this is common across the district, really doing more than PE, but really being another SEL, social emotional learning ambassador out there, just doing amazing things with kids, in this particular case, kinder kids. But really the spirit was just so awesome to see with our kids. We went in, we saw explicit reading instruction, we saw phonics lessons, we saw high-level fourth grade math, and by high level I mean I couldn't do it, and they looked like they were just humming right along. It was actually, seriously, it was beautiful though to watch not only the lesson with problems on the board, but the teacher, again, it's the second time I've seen it in just a couple of weeks, talking about how many different ways can you solve this problem? Very different than the way most of us grew up. Walked into another class and saw second step SEL lesson, explicitly teaching social emotional learning techniques with students. I was able to sit down with a student who told me all about it and then asked who I was. So that was good. And then we stopped by a kinder class on our way out that was very excited because later in the day they were going to have a visit from the zoo with some animals being brought over to the school site. That was in less than 2 hours at one school site in our district. It's just a reminder There's always things to work on, but wow, we do some pretty impressive things for students. Lastly, we are doing our principal check-in meetings, which means each principal comes in and has a meeting with me and Mr. Bahadur Singh, and then the appropriate assistant superintendent, depending on their level. And we spend time together going through quite a few things. We go through SMART goals. They need to bring in their measurable goals for their student outcomes, which align with our 5 priority areas. We do some data analysis. We talk about how they've gone through that. And that would be sad if that's where we ended. But then we go into the health of not only their students, but their staff, talking about how are people? Are we okay? Are we healthy right now? And then we finish with something. It's interesting because it's a good reminder to me that sometimes people forget this part. We remind everybody school is supposed to be fun. And if we are too fixated on always preparing for the next thing, we're missing the thing we're in. If you're in high school and all you're thinking about is college prep, you are missing high school. And I was thinking to the GLOW or the night rally at Gunn. That was just fun. Miss Latin America and I sat together and judged lightly. But you got to hear kids yell for an hour and just have fun and be high school kids. That could have been 1988, 98, or now. And it's just a reminder, last one, when we met with Nicole Manu from Greendale, and she came in so prepared for her meeting, we also just had to say, let's remember they're 4. Let's let a 4-year-old be a 4-year-old. Let's let that 5th grader not worry so much about how hard middle school is going to be, and that middle school kid to be so prepared for where they end up in high school. It's all going to work out. So good reminders, very optimistic about where we're at as a district right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Austin. The next item on our agenda is open forum. Open forum is an opportunity for members of the community to address the board on topics that are not on our agenda for this evening. For this item and for other items, you'll find instructions about how to register your interest in speaking to the board in the agenda. There's an online form that you can use to do that. And our practice is to take those expressions of interest for each item until the first speaker has finished for that item, so that we can track how many people we have speaking, so that we can adjust the time according to our rules. I'll begin in a moment with open forum. The board also adopted some rules around public comment that involve alternating between speakers in person and on Zoom, so you might see that happening as we go, depending on who is signed up to speak. The first speaker for open forum is Stephen Davis, who's here in person. Mr. Davis. And speakers will have 3 minutes each on this item.
Good evening. Ooh, hello? Hello? Should I just,
You go right ahead.
Ooh, that worked. Okay. First 2 real brief points. I actually look at all your board materials, and there's a lot of data in the wonderful PDF format. It would be really helpful to everybody, including the public, that data be provided in Excel or some other usable format. Much as I love fat fingering in data, it shouldn't have to be done that way at this point in time. 2, another technical thing, and both of these will be coming up later tonight. It's really important to do crosstabs of groups like students with disability and socioeconomically disadvantaged students with other categories. You can't know what's going on unless you can look across those tabs, and that data should be available because it's available from the state. 3, I will continue my push for a district advisory committee for special education and disability. I've heard people ask why we should have this in addition to our PTA and CAC. And it is for one very clear purpose. It is a tool for governance by the board. It shows the seriousness of purpose that this board wants to fundamentally improve and close the huge gaps between students with disability and our general ed students. It reflects the complexity of these issues. I can sort of scrape the surface using publicly available data. If you had a district advisory committee, they could be allowed access to internal district data appropriately so that better analysis could be done. We need to address the culture of discrimination. Certainly, we have seen it at large for disability recently and continually. And I will say, as a parent of a third grader, as he gets older, I get more and more concerned about it. And I can tell you many parents have experienced this from their non-disabled peers. Finally, 20% of the population is disabled, and we should discuss the inclusion of disabled staff. Just like other marginalized groups, disabled students should see their peers in professional positions. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Raz Mazor-Hufian on Zoom.
Hi. So I want to talk about adding more locker rooms to the auxiliary locker room. If you're unaware, the auxiliary locker room is locker room at Pally, which is an option for students who don't want to be in the boy or girl locker rooms, usually due to a different gender identity. Currently, there are 8 lockers in the auxiliary locker room, but a minimum of 17 students using that locker room. I know that because 17 students from inside of the locker room have signed the petition to get more lockers. That's not enough students. I mean, not enough lockers for too many students. We have at least 2 people in each locker. I know of lockers that have up to 5 students in them. And this isn't just a space issue, although it is a space issue, and having that many people in one locker room is really frustrating as someone who uses it. But it makes getting a locker room that fits your gender identity a popularity contest, judging if you have a friend that's willing to split it with you and already has a locker. We need more locker rooms, period. And we also need the fact that there is an auxiliary locker room to be shared with freshmen at orientation and just anyone having a locker room. This should be information that everyone learns as a part of going to school, not something hidden behind if you know the right people. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Maura Uman in person.
Hi, good evening. My name is Maura Uman. I'm the Executive Director of Youth Community Service. It's wonderful to be here. Thank you so much. I'm just here to say, give you a quick report that programming in all the middle school and high schools is off to a great start with students signing up for several activities and starting to earn their service hours. YCS after-school programs as well that are our peer leader programs have also begun their programming. And since the start of the school year, YCS has engaged over 800 individuals and over 3,000 hours of service across the programs. Specifically, I want to thank PAUSD families and teachers and staff and leadership that supported the National Day of Service that was on September 11th. We had 42 partner agencies that hosted a number of activities in both Palo Alto and East Palo Alto. And the theme for this year was showing up for the community. The event brought together about 450 volunteers, completing over 1,000 volunteer hours at 26 different projects that focused on the environment, education, health, hunger, housing, child welfare, and seniors. I finally also wanted to share that this weekend, Gunn High School YCS Interact Club is offering the Trunk or Treat event. This is something that started during the pandemic when high school students decorated their cars and all the younger PAUSD students stayed in their cars and got to celebrate some version of Halloween. We're happy to say that we're out of that phase now, and the tradition continues in its third year. So the event is on October 30th from 2 to 6 p.m. at the Gunn parking lot. So we invite all the younger PAUSD students to come out for this wonderful, fun event that the Gunn students are putting together. Thank you so much for your support, and I look forward to be back and share more about how we are supporting the priority area of service and celebrating others. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Star Teach Out on Zoom.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Good evening. About 2 weeks ago, Palo Alto Weekly subscribers received a newsletter which included why so much nastiness in local election campaigns, and some of us questioning how much the early endorsement as well as some less trust in our board and increased polarization in our city. And I hope that's temporary. We all like to win. We all like to voice our opinions. But I ask that you please agendize and discuss whether endorsement guidelines would benefit our community. To assist you with this, please consider the following which have occurred. 1, is it ethical for 3 sitting board members to endorse a candidate 1 month before the filing deadline, not knowing if the best candidate is yet to file, and to enlist their influences, their inside working knowledge, their campaign supporter list, perhaps, and financial resources into giving this candidate advantages? 2, is it ethical for a school board to actively seek to create a potential 4-to-1 voting bloc? Who will be representing the voices of parents who don't share your views? Number 3, is it ethical for one candidate to get prior knowledge of questions to be asked at a forum, as happened with the PTAC forum? Was a board member involved with that disclosure? I don't know. Did the candidate receive these questions knowing the others did not? I don't know the answer to that. Number 4, one candidate was the first to officially file with Santa Clara County 5 to 8 days before all other candidates. And yet, some of our board members perpetuated a false narrative that a highly qualified candidate filed papers late, suggesting a lack of commitment. Is this ethical? 5, what is being lost by candidates and endorsing board members focusing on money and fundraising? If not legally enforceable, consider whether a board position could exert pressure to put caps on spending, moving the focus to quality forum questions, civility, and building community. 6, for the sake of reducing polarization and encouraging critical discourse, consider whether you and all of us should be encouraging candidates with opinions, values, and goals contrary to our own. How else can we bridge the growing divide in not only our city, but our nation? Thank you. I'll send some more comments your way via email.
So that concludes open forum. The next item on our agenda is the approval of the consent calendar. Items on the consent calendar are considered all at once without discussion. If any member of the public or a board member wants to discuss any of these, then they'll be pulled from the consent calendar and put into the action agenda. I don't have any comments from the public on any of these items.
I move we adopt the consent calendar as presented.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Student preferential vote, Ms. Sia?
Aye.
Board members, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Consent calendar is adopted. Next item on our agenda is item 5A, the approval of a resolution regarding procurement. Mr. Holm, is this you?
Good evening, members of the board. This measure is a follow-up from our item that we reviewed last week regarding the Hoover project and pathway forward that was just on the consent agenda. One of those items in there was that we would, in going forward with that, we would exercise a lease-leaseback project delivery model. In order to do that, the board has to take a resolution and adopt a best value procurement procedure guidelines, which is what this document is. So this just lays out the general principle that we are going to hire a contractor not solely on the lowest price, which is typical of the design bid build model of the public contract code, but allows for interviewing and selecting a contractor based on qualifications to provide the best value for the project.
Board members' comments or questions? Mr. Collins?
I don't have any objection to the substance, and I agree it's consistent with what was presented last time for that particular project, but this resolution was not presented prior, and this seems broader than there's a single case, then this is the adoption of a general policy as opposed to regarding the particular project. So I'd say procedurally, I would feel more comfortable if we either waive the 2-meeting rule or had a second reading of this after. It doesn't seem to me to be ripe for action. Same applies to the next item, by the way.
Further comments, Ms. DeBrienza?
I just wanted to clarify. So are you saying that this topic has been brought up before, but because the resolution is the first time we're seeing it, you want to see it the second time?
I'm sorry, you're talking to me?
Yeah.
Yes.
I just wanted to clarify.
Yeah, the resolution is new. I didn't realize the resolution would be forthcoming. I've never seen the resolution before. It seems before we adopt policy that applies to all projects, we should have 2 readings.
I'm certainly happy to go along with that. Is there a motion to waive the 2-meeting rule or not?
I'm kind of curious to know how timely this is.
Either is fine with us.
Is there a motion to waive the 2-meeting rule? Mr. Durant?
Well, I just wanted to comment that I've said this before, but I think this is within the 2-meeting rule if we were to vote on it now. I think it's within the scope of a prior discussed item that discussed the same substance. So
I think there's probably pros and cons there. I'm a student of the 2-meeting rule, but I can't I can't speak to the ultimate question, but I think it's Mr. Collins having raised the objection. I think we can either, and given the fact that staff is okay with waiting, we can either waive the 2-meeting rule or we can bring it back next time.
I mean, personally, I'd be happy to see it on consent next time. If I don't have any objection to it. I don't hear any objections from my colleagues.
Okay, well.
I have no objections either way.
Okay, so I don't hear a motion to waive the 2-meeting rule, so what we'll do is bring it back on consent for the next meeting. And I imagine we'll handle the next resolution the same way. Mr. Holm, do you want to speak to that one? And if there's no further comments on this one? Okay.
Certainly.
Yeah.
So the next resolution is also related to the Hoover project. As we presented last time and as was part of the consent item was to go forward with the Hoover direction working with a prefabricated product known as TimberQuest. This would be, because this would be a sole source to identify and use this TimberQuest product, we have developed a resolution to declare this a specific brand or trade name for a sole source selection. So that's what this resolution is about.
Okay, any comments or questions on this one? All right, then.
That's the same.
Okay, then we'll bring it back for adoption on the consent calendar at the next meeting.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Holm. The next item on our agenda is 6A regarding the general counsel. Dr. Austin?
That is mine. So this one's going to require a little discussion. We're going to have some decision points here. with no action. So this is just for direction. As I stated in the write-up, and I just want to reiterate, the two proposals from our two main firms, so DWK and AALRR, are different. And we discussed with each firm if they wanted to present apples and apples, and ultimately they both said they could, but we really kind of landed on, let's just bring two different looking models, and both firms said that they would match what the other firm did as far as the structure, if that's a direction we wanted to go. So before we get into it, let me just lay out the decisions as I think they exist. 4 hours or 6 hours. So in the DWK, you see 6 hours for a day. For AALRR, you see 4. Virtual or in person. The DWK proposal is in person. Downside with in person is that we're paying for their drive time, their travel time. Good side is it's nice to have someone across from you. And then conversely, the nice part about and I'll call it Andelson-Atkinson, it's just easier for me to say. Just as I say that, the Andelson-Atkinson proposal is nice. It's 4 hours. We'd block a period of time, but it would be virtual. Fine. And then there's a question about, would we like to split this between two firms, whatever model we come across, or do we want a winner take all? So those are kind of the questions that are before us. And that will help me to go back, tell both firms, this is what we think. If you'd like my 2 cents on it, I'd be happy to offer that. We did fly the position as general counsel as we said we would, and it returned candidates who had law degrees, but many of which were out of state, and the education expertise was lacking as a whole. We did not think that there were candidates that were better quality than what we would get in this model. The other thing with both of these firms, the attorneys that they would provide to us are all attorneys who have worked with our school district in the past. You have a relationship with them. We have relationships with them. These are top quality senior attorneys. Okay. Our thought on this, after talking with the team, is it would be better to start smaller than big so that we're not paying for hours that aren't used. We do think that defined periods of time are important, and that can condition our staff to hold questions that aren't urgent, and we could just say, okay, on whatever day. On Mondays, we know from whatever it is, 9 to noon, 9 to 1, we're with whatever attorney it is, and they have expertise in some strengths in particular areas. We would know that, for an example, BPRC, Amanda, and whoever else might be working with those particular policies would know that this is our BPRC kind of attorney, okay? And they would meet with them. They could even attend our meetings. That could get a nice routine. I can't believe I'm saying this. I'm such a proponent of in-person, but I do believe the virtual makes a lot of sense. Not only for the attorneys, I think it's a little hard to swallow that we're paying $300 an hour for someone to be in traffic when we can eliminate that, maximize our time, and be virtual. And if in-person is necessary, they can always jump on a plane or a car, depending on which firm and which attorney, and get here when those times arise. But as a practice, I don't think it adds enough value to prioritize. As far as 1 or 2 firms, I prefer 2. I understand there's some benefit in 1, but when you have 2, it does allow us to have a couple different perspectives. Also, even within large umbrella firms, which these both are, there are areas of expertise within a firm that, sometimes tips more to one than the other. And our attorneys in here, they all know each other, by the way. Doesn't matter which firm you're in. They have a pretty good sense of what that looks like. So my recommendation, and certainly it's not like ironclad, would be 4 hours, 2 days a week, 1 day for one firm, 1 day for the other, and virtual except for when needed in person. Okay, I'll stop and we'll be happy to take notes.
Okay, comments and questions from board members. Mr. Durab?
Thank you. So the only other addition I had was, for Zoom or in person and whether winner take all or split and number of hours, my thought is it's really up to you guys because you know how much time you want to spend with general counsel per week, how much time you need. But I think having weekly or at least routine meetings with the board president baked into that time is important. I think it's important for the president to be able to meet with general counsel, and so we should bake that into the contract. The other two pieces I was thinking were it's beneficial to have an attorney at board meetings during open and closed session. Now, it's been the general counsel because we had a general counsel. Same with BPRC. But as I was thinking about it, I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be the general counsel. But if you look at it and it's, in terms of a cost, it's going to be cheaper for our general counsel to do it versus an outside counsel, then that might be something to bake in as well.
Other comments, Ms. Latimer?
Yeah, I have a couple comments, and I think my first question, comment is for my colleagues. I think that by going with outside counsel, we're definitely kind of opting for the model of a general counsel who's a legal resource for staff, which is the role that I served when I worked at a firm that was a general counsel. So that model being general counsel's there, staff has questions, they go to them. So it's sort of a staff-directed use of the general counsel. And of course, the assumption would be the GC would also provide some proactive legal advice around, changes to the law or regulations or stuff that's coming up that's sticky. But in general, it's a staff-directed support idea. That's different. Another possible model is the more compliance and oversight model, where there's sort of a more proactive component of the GC role. I think the first one is probably what we need and makes sense in an area like education that's so heavily regulated. Staff, where the regulations are, and this will be a way for you to get support with that. But I just want to make sure the five of us are comfortable that that's the model we're opting for, because I think we really need to be clear because it impacts the responsibilities. And I think, perhaps there was some muddiness previously around kind of exactly what the duties are. So I just want to, if I'm comfortable, are the rest of us all comfortable? Because I think if we're going with an outside counsel, that's clearly the model that we're opting for. So, yeah.
Mr. Brianza?
When considering this, it was sort of the one concern I had, right? Like clearly having an outside person with limited hours is different than an oversight compliance kind of person. And I think one of the reasons we went with an in-house person was for that. So I think we're potentially missing out on that. And yet, like you said, we didn't get applicants that were really going to fit the bill. So if that's not an option right now, I do think it's important that we have the legal resource for staff, which, I assume that you've been reaching out to those lawyers as needed. But it is a concern I have. It's not my primary concern, but it is something I want us to pay attention to with whatever we settle on for this.
Mr. Collins?
So I guess first a question. Are we going to save any money this way? Versus if we said no to this and just used the legal resources, we call lawyers all the time as it is.
Right. That's an impossible question to answer with a straight face, so I really can't answer that question. Part of the thought with the original general counsel model was that they would manage attorneys. What happens if you have a general counsel without an education background is you're managing the outsourcing of attorneys. So you have an attorney managing other attorneys on the outside. This cuts through a layer of that. But as far as actually is it going to save money, it's hard to tell. We were out of school for a year plus, depending on your level, So our attorney fees were down. They were down because we didn't have people here. So it's a hard benchmark. If it was purely for saving money, I would have a hard time saying any one of these makes sense. If it gets to consistency of having somebody that if you don't have here, you may take a shot without asking the question, that is definitely better with this model. This exact model is something I've used, but not virtually, but on-site, splitting two firms. Very beneficial, especially once you get in the routine. People know this is my time slot. I'm going in, I hold my questions, I bring them in. For the board, you're going to know 2 or 3 attorneys are your go-tos. But for purely saving money, I can't say.
So, I mean, so my takeaway is, I mean, it's almost like not hiring a general counsel. We're essentially just buying in bulk from the legal providers that we already buy from. And we're not even getting a bulk discount is what it sounds like. So, I mean, and that's fine. I think my colleagues' comments I agree with. I think we're essentially buying legal resources in bulk. And that's part of, but certainly not all of, what we intended when we went down the route of a general counsel in the first place. So I guess, I mean, my takeaway from that, and listening to you, Dr. Austin, is I guess I'm indifferent whether we do this or not. It doesn't seem to me, it doesn't sound like we're getting a great discount. It seems like we use the same providers that we use anyway. I don't get what we're really getting out of committing to this, other than if you think that the regularity of scheduling is beneficial enough that we want to block in. And what you said made sense. Maybe it is useful to say, hey, it's Tuesday, the lawyer's on call. You know, we can make sure it reminds us that we need to do lawyer things. But I guess I'd also say I'd like to see us revisit this in a year, because we didn't see applicants that we liked this year doesn't mean that we shouldn't try again, because I do think we're losing something that I thought would benefit our organization by having a full-time lawyer on site, on staff.
Ms. Lamre?
I have more comments.
Yeah.
I want to piggyback on both of those comments. I do think we gain just having the regular, whether it's 2 days a week, 1 day a week, whatever we decide on, knowing there's a time there, staff knowing they have that resource. I do think we gain sort of what Dr. Austin said. You're less likely to just, I'll just do it. You're more likely to stop and check. And I think the stopping and checking in an area that's so heavily regulated like education is something we need to be encouraging. So as long as we're encouraging a culture of staff use the resource, which I think we are if we're paying for the regular time.
I just want to tag on to one thing that I think I'd left out. With the block of time, the attorneys can also do trainings for us, things that are very expensive outside of this process. They can also start projects with us, take them back, come back and work on it some more. Not everything is super time sensitive, but I did leave out the training component, which is, that's a good thing for us.
And the last point I wanted to make is similar to Mr. Durup's point about, I think that having another thing that wasn't clear, I think with our first go around with the general counsel, was the board's relationship and how we communicated. And it was, we can't have 5 of us calling attorneys all the time asking for an update. So I think the regular meeting with the board president and how those can take place organically, whether you're getting in just sort of like a brain dump of what they've worked on, whether you're asking specific questions. And then if stuff comes up that needs to be discussed with the full board, sort of figuring out how to do that in closed session. But I do think that's a really important part that we gain, to Mr. Collins' point, that we do gain with the general counsel, is that ability to have one point person for the board president to just stay on top of all the legal issues that are going on.
So just, I mean, again, piggybacking more, I think the goal is to hire great people for your management team. And I think having a great lawyer would be a valuable addition. Just having a lawyer for the sake of having a lawyer, not a particularly valuable addition. But I would still strive in the future to see if there's a great lawyer that you can hire.
Mr. Durant?
And then to follow up on that comment, yeah, I think it makes sense. I think it makes sense for us to revisit it in a year. I think if we're not locked in for a year, it makes sense to keep revisiting it over the next year. And seeing, there's no reason to not look for a full-time general counsel while we have this other solution in the interim.
So drop to that point, and I'm not going to do that at the table to pull up the termination clauses. I just don't remember off the top of my head. We can make sure that very short termination clauses on this. This is a benefit of this approach. We can have a short termination clause with no downside.
Other comments or questions? Ms. Sia?
This is a little bit removed from the general conversation, but I remember bringing this up a few months ago at our first board meeting about student involvement with the general counsel. I know a lot of these are about like larger details, about like hiring, virtual in person, or like 2 firms, but I just want to make sure it's a consideration that the general counsel, because they are like not an employee in the district, have some sort of initiative or consideration to reach out to students if possible. I know that in my experiences working with Ms. Vishkan, that just like knowing that there is an adult who has a lot of legal knowledge about things that students are basically unaware of is really nice to have, especially getting to meet with them and talk to them in person makes it a lot less scary. When you see like general counsel, it feels like this very intimidating adult who you can't ask any questions to. And I think having it be also a resource to students, well, of course, I think it'd be more helpful to staff, would be something to keep in mind.
That's an important point to make sure we clarify that I think part of the need for not as many hours as we have shifted the Title IX responsibilities away from this role, and I want to make sure that everybody knows that those roles, though we have a person who's now in charge of that, and I'm assuming there's still a lot of contact happening with students, but yeah, let's think through maybe if there's some sort of component of student contact that we could think through with this role.
Okay, so I'll just make a couple of comments. It sounds to me like there's agreement on the board to move forward with negotiating around 4 hours a week, as you laid out, Dr. Austin. My own sense is that in the past, people have sometimes relied on their own kind of judgment or common sense around how to proceed when they haven't had access to a lawyer, and that has led to some pretty unhappy outcomes. So I think if we lower the cost of getting legal advice, then we'll see legal advice being sought, more often when it's appropriate. I think we've been penny wise and pound foolish in that in the past. So I'm happy to go down this road. I think it would be desirable to have a full-time general counsel on staff, but we have to deal with the reality there. In terms of the relationship between the general counsel and the board, the general counsel is the board's attorney, just like all the other attorneys are ultimately. Our rules say that only the board president can have direct contact with the attorney outside of a kind of closed session environment or some other kind of an arrangement. So kind of naturally, the president can seek advice from and meet with the attorney as part of their responsibility. So I don't think we need to necessarily build that in, and I think probably different board presidents will want to use that time in different ways, or more or less than others. So I don't think we need to kind of write that in, but it's and obviously, Dr. Austin, you understand that relationship, so you would facilitate it when it was required. So I think it sounds to me like we have broad agreement, and if there's any points of disagreement that we need to discuss or clarify, we should do that, but it doesn't sound like we do. Okay.
I have one clarification. Are we proceeding with 1 4-hour day, or are we going to do 1 4-hour day with each firm? So
Yep,
8
my
hours.
plan is to bring back 1 4-hour day for each firm for a total of 2 8-hours a week.
Okay, great. Thank you. So let's move on then to item 6B, Fletcher Middle School choice program proposal.
Yes. Mr. Lopez, why don't you go ahead and introduce our guest?
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Austin. Yeah, this evening we have Ms. Howe, Mr. Sanchez, along with Ms. Wallace and Ms. Ray from Fletcher Middle School, and they're going to be presenting the Sustainability Choice Program for Fletcher.
Good evening. Good evening. My name is Melissa Howe. I'm the principal of Ellen Fletcher Middle School. Thank you for giving us some time this evening to present our Sustainability Choice Program proposal. I'm excited to introduce two of our amazing Fletcher educators, Becky Ray and Tammy Wallace, to share the details with you.
Launching a Sustainability Choice Program at Fletcher is meaningful for students and staff. Students in our committee were clear that they want to learn about this topic and do something positive. Kids today don't always have rich experiences in nature, and many feel anxious about how the current environmental and social conditions will impact their future. It's important that they see adults around them in and out of school share a vision for sustainability and that their everyday actions can make an impact. This is a rich opportunity for project-based learning and community service in areas that are within their locus of control. The sphere of the students' daily choices, how to protect soil, water quality, air, and climate for now and for the future. This is our mission statement. Fletcher's Sustainability for All program creates opportunities for students to explore ways that they can take equitable action to promote a flourishing environment in which people and living things access healthy food, clean air, and safe water. This has been very wordsmithed in many, many versions because it really needed to have meaning for staff and for students and for the parents on the committee. And so we really want to have something important to guide us and kind of keep us focused. How did this model come about? Fletcher proposed a few choice themes. We discussed it. It was honed last spring. And in the end, this focus is aligned with efforts in the city of Palo Alto and at Stanford in their sustainability new venture. We hope that this will enable rich community service, resources, and networking opportunities. Over the summer, quite a few number of our staff, we're a small school, but quite a few of our staff members got together in their summer to research, to learn about environmental justice and sustainability, to figure out what other schools are doing in our county and in nearby counties and all across the country. We researched, we worked on feasibility, we thought about impacts on electives, on kids' schedules, on everything. And then we brought this to our entire staff for their, we know everybody can't always be around in the summer to work. So we brought it to our entire staff for more comments and more vetting. The last phase was to broaden our perspective by hosting community committee for new staff if they weren't able to participate in the summer, students, parents, gun students, and our community partners. And we had lots of people from each category, including all 3 grade levels of students, and that was really wonderful. These multiple viewpoints produced a rich discussion as to how we can organize the program, the potential impacts, and opportunities for learning and service, both in and out of the classroom.
Thank you. So we are proposing that all Fletcher students participate in both instruction and tangible experiences related to the multiple areas of sustainability. Is it expected that all core classes will include elements of the sustainability program? Actual details are likely to vary from year to year as both student interests in current events dictate and provide applicable examples and opportunities. Students will learn how their choices that they and others make affect the world around them. As a fundamental part of this choice program, we'll hold grade level field trips with a combined focus of directly experiencing nature, exploring conservation efforts, and learning about green technologies. All students in each grade level will participate in these events. We are in the process of planning these field trips for our current students as a jump start to the more expanded program that we hope begins next year. Next month, our current 6th grade students will once again enjoy a 3-day science trip to the Marine Headlands. We've had a 2-year hiatus from this practice, but we're thrilled to be able to go back to resume them after COVID, as hopefully mostly in the past. We're in the process of working out details for both 7th and 8th grade trips that will be just day trips during the winter and spring. As part of this program, we hope to build significant connections to the broader Bay Area community, hold assemblies for the entire school and for families, and to learn from guest speakers. Students who desire deeper experiences within sustainability will find opportunities to participate in clubs, after-school activities, community service, and participate in off-campus partnerships. We're exploring possible elective course offerings to continue this sustainability focus. Next slide. I forgot I had slides. In discussions with students, it's clear that they want more than an academic focus on sustainability. They want the school to look and feel different. We're exploring the expansion of our landscaping and gardens to include demonstration plantings of native plants, plantings that are desirable for beneficial insects and wildlife, as well, such as bees and butterflies, as well as producing food for human consumption. There's a big desire to work with the food services program to create more environmental packaging of food and to eliminate some of the food waste that's become quite a concern on campus, among other things. So I was in junior high school back when the first Earth Day was held in 1970, which ages me a bit. This experience has launched me to pursue a lifetime of earth-friendly living and environmental awareness. I hope that participating in the Fletcher Sustainability Program will likewise provide current students with a lifetime connection to similar pursuits. Our program has connections to the high school pathways. Community partnerships can create lasting career opportunities for students. Sustainable communities cannot be created in the time that students are at Fletcher, but allowing them to begin a lifetime journey is possible. I believe that this robust choice program is a wonderful first step toward that. So in conclusion, I'd like to thank all of the people who have contributed to this proposal, our staff, parents, students, community members, and give you a picture of some of our students several years ago enjoying the Marin Headlands as part of their science camp experience. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Any other staff comments? Okay, let's turn then to board members for questions. Oh, I'm sorry, I apologize. We do have some public comments. Let's begin there. We have 2 public comments. The first is Nicole Chuang in person.
I just wanted to express my support for the Sustainability for All Choice program. I am so excited to learn more about it because it aligns with our community and our city's sustainability goals, as well as the urgency that I know from talking to our students they feel about wanting to have an impact as the environment is a top concern for them. And I love that there is going to be hopefully collaboration with Stanford's new School of Sustainability. I think that's tapping a local resource that we should do more to partner with. I love that it was designed at the grassroots level, and I think it demonstrates the way that we should be collaborating as a school community where all members, all stakeholders in the community get to participate in the development of a wonderful new program. I hope that it is indicative of a sign that we're ready to look more at our choice programs and expanding the ones that we know are already in high demand, in addition to launching new ones that look like they will also have equally high demand. And I want to also speak to the fact that I hope it will include some aspect where we pull in elementary students, our TK through 5 students, to participate in some of the service, because I know as a mother to very young students in our district, there's oftentimes a lack of volunteer opportunities and service opportunities for them, and particularly when it comes to the environment, which is going to affect that generation even more than it affects us today. I think it's important that we include them. I know there's the partnership with GUN. I just hope we look also at ways to include our elementary students. So I urge the board to continue this great work that they're doing at Fletcher. I'm very excited to see it.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Jocelyn Levy on Zoom.
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I just want to say that I'm also very excited about this proposed Sustainability for Choice program. We're all dealing with the effects of climate change, and this problem will be with us for years to come. I volunteered in elementary and middle schools, and students care about the environment and want to help. There's a difference, however, in how kids confront the issue of climate change and its impact. Elementary students are idealistic, motivated, and happy to follow the lead of teachers and parent volunteers. When they're in middle school, however, their participation in environmental activities drop. This does not mean that they don't care, but there are competing concerns. When they do participate, they want to design solutions for themselves with adult support. I think that this program is the perfect fit, giving them a structure to learn, pursue their passions, and problem solve. It also stops them from feeling hopeless in the face of an enormous challenge. They can see that they have a role to play and are given the tools to make change. I look forward to seeing this program adopted in the district. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So board member comments and questions. Ms. Latimer?
You can. So, I guess how do I phrase this? First of all, I just want to say I love this program. I got a little teary reading about it this weekend. I would definitely send my kids here in a heartbeat. With that preface, I guess my question is this really a choice program? Isn't this the whole school? Is that what we're, okay, so then I guess that sort of my question is, you know, when we have our choice programs in elementary, people apply to them. If they don't get in, they go to their neighborhood school. Fletcher is a neighborhood school. So there's going to be a lot of kids, I'm assuming they can't transfer to Green or JLS if they don't want to be part of this, right? Just sort of how's this, I love this program, and I've learned one thing as a board member, it's that as strongly as I feel about certain things, there are lots of parents who feel exactly the opposite of the way I feel. So I just want to sort of understand logistically how that's going to work.
Thank you. That was a good question. And it's one we've actually spoke about. So the sustainability concept, climate science, is already embedded into a lot of our current state standards. We're looking to emphasize those a little bit more. And for those who are, you know, very interested like yourself in pursuing and learning more, then that would be a great option. And we are also exploring some electives. For those individuals that may not have this as a priority or an interest, then they would have the opportunity to not participate in some of the grade level electives or even grade level field trips, the electives, and potentially some of the after school or during school club times.
Others? Yeah. Mr. Brianza?
I sort of echo what our two commenters said, right? I'm really excited about it. I love how you all worked at coming around something. I love the partnerships. It's a city priority. There's a new school of sustainability at Stanford. It's just really exciting. And I can't wait to see it play out, and I can't wait to see what kids from other schools say, yeah, heck, I want to go there and participate in that. Thank you for all your work on it.
Ms. Sia?
I also want to just express, like, as a student, this is so exciting to me. When I saw it, I was already like smiling, and just hearing the presentation just makes me really hopeful. One thing I'm really, really happy about is that it reaches all students. I understand the fact that not all students would be interested, but I think even getting that exposure and like integrating it into all different subjects is just really great to hear, because sustainability is often seen as something that's optional or something that can be sacrificed or only reserved for, like, you know, an AP environmental science class or a science course. But the fact that it's reaching all these middle schoolers and all these courses, it just makes me really happy that I know that this is a real priority, something that we all have to live with, especially students have to live with. That just makes me really excited.
Great. Mr. Durrell?
Just to echo my colleagues' comments, like the social justice pathways program, preparing our students, especially at the middle school level, to be tackling these huge societal issues of import that they're going to have to be dealing with long after we're gone is so crucial, and it's so great that we're doing that. So I'm hugely supportive of this. Thank you.
Mr. Collins?
This is probably more in the realm of, I wouldn't expect answers to this question at this point, but I think if we create a new choice program, I mean, maybe alluding to some of the issues Ms. Lettermerick was getting at, we should probably think about, I think we need to give some thought to how to structure it from an enrollment management point of view. So things that we haven't, so one question is the whole school versus part of school? If it's part of a school, how do you allocate? Another issue that we've run into before but have never exercised is whether there would be neighborhood preference for getting into a program like this. We don't have that in most of the other choice programs, but many other districts do. And there are good reasons if you want to retain neighborhood schools to have neighborhood preference for choice programs. So I think there's some, the idea seems good. I think we should think about, since this came about originally as an enrollment management tool, we should think about some of the enrollment management implications. And I don't think it's especially important that it be done right away or that it come to the board. I mean, I think it's something staff should work out, but I just wanted to flag it.
Yeah, I want to piggyback on that too. That's sort of the point I was making, because it's not a choice program. It's a mandatory neighborhood school with some kids who can also opt into it, right? So it's different than the way we've handled this in any other choice program.
I can take that one. Yeah, that's exactly right. And, right from the beginning, let's just back up a little bit. I went over to Fletcher a year ago, and Melissa and I stood in front of the staff and said, we have an enrollment number problem. We have a problem. And I think that their biggest fear, and Melissa, you can correct me on this one if I'm misspeaking, was that we were going to tell them what they needed to do. And we instead said, why don't you come back to us with something? And in fact, why don't you come back with something that feels natural? We really spent time on that. And I'm just channeling former board member Ms. Godfrey here for a second. Not a bolt-on, not something that is just this thing. And when they came back with this proposal, I was so excited for all the reasons Ms. Howell's already touched on and the team, that it is a natural fit with where we're going as a city, with Stanford's new school sustainability, with parent interest, with student interest, with staff interest. So the idea here is that Fletcher starts with the boundary, and you're going to Fletcher. You can opt out of components of this, but not the daily instruction. And then this is a place where if you can get there and you're interested, you can come from other places in the district. We're not looking to make Fletcher an 1,100 student school, but 600 plus would be really healthy. And we're hovering low 500s right now. And it doesn't have to happen in the first year. And we didn't get into the weeds here, but we'll just touch on, we've talked about as enrollment goes up, this could become more of a choice within the school. But to start with, we think it needs to start whole school, or we could have an unintended consequence. So I hope that makes sense, is accurate enough.
Yeah.
Mr. Collins?
Yeah, that's helpful and makes perfect sense. I do think as you evolve your plans and get to the point of implementing, there needs to be good communication around it because it's different from all the other things we've done. So I think the community will initially try to, frame it the way we frame other choice programs, and if it's different, then we're going to have to communicate that very clearly.
Okay, other comments or questions? So in terms of process, the board, this is a discussion item with future review and approval from the board for moving forward. When do you expect to?
We actually think it's gray. So that'll be something I'd like to talk probably to you about with agenda setting. If choice programs, we don't have all the information about how other choice programs were either approved or just implemented. So there's a question about that, and I'd like to spend time with you on agenda setting on that.
Okay, so we can consider that. Mr. Brenza?
I can just say that in our choice ad hoc committee last night, it was confirmed that sometime in the 70s, the board approved Hoover and Ohlone as alternative programs.
So just to add to that, I mean, because it is interesting, I'm going to have to wrap my mind around the concept here, because it's one thing to take a school out of the neighborhood school rotation and say, we're going to take away a neighborhood school and implement a choice, and another to say, I'm going to have a neighborhood school and it's going to be a choice. which I think may call for a different approval process because you're not actually hurting anybody in the neighborhood. In the other situation, you are.
Yeah, I guess the question, I mean, this is a question for us to discuss. Is this something like a curriculum decision, I guess is the question, from a board approval perspective, not from a running a curriculum review process perspective, but from a board approval process perspective, is it something like a curriculum decision? So why don't we have that conversation and we can decide at that point whether and how to bring it back.
Are you going to bring funding to us at that same time? Like, there was a mention of a TOSA, like is the proposal going to be, and it's going to cost this much money?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm assuming.
So just to go back in time, we have some TOSAs in place right now that have release periods. We have grant funding. So, you know, I think regardless, we should bring it back with the next pieces. Because we do have some funding attached, especially grant funding. It's probably good to share with everybody and get that out. So we'll decide if it needs approval or not, but I think there's no doubt it's going to come back again.
Okay. Anything else? Thank you so much for coming, and thanks for a great proposal. I'm as excited about it as others are. Okay, let's move on then to item 7A under staff reports, and this is healthy attendance. And I'm not sure who has this one, actually. Dr. Austin, do you want to?
Mr. Lopez, are you going to introduce?
Yes, yeah, thank you, Dr. Austin. Now we have Mr. Spiritu and Ms. Carlo Magno. They're going to be providing us with updates on the current interventions, on the current progress and interventions that are in place right now to help improve chronic absenteeism and truancy.
All right. Good evening, PAUSD Board. Healthy attendance, creating a culture of academic achievement that starts with showing up. Sounds like Dr. Austin wrote that. Number one, attendance is the number one predictor of dropout and graduation rates. 17%. Only 17% of chronically absent students in kindergarten and first grade can read at grade level. Just see if you were paying attention, Mr. Lopez. 25%, there's a 25% drop in graduating from high school in 4 years when students are absent between 5 to 9 days per semester. 5 to 9, as little as 5 to 9 absences a semester can drop a student's GPA from a 3.0 to a 2.7. Deals with college eligibility. PAUSD promise and healthy attendance is defined as students attending when they are healthy and able to be with us safely. So really important with chronic absenteeism and truancy and how they differ. Chronic absenteeism is defined as excused and unexcused absences when a pupil misses 10% or more school days in the school year. So for a school year, if you had to run the report, 180 days, 10% of that is 18 days of excused and unexcused absences. At PAUSD, truancy is what we're focusing on. And that's unexcused absences, 10% or more at the end of the school year, 18 days total. So again, the focus is truancy as it pertains to healthy attendance. So chronic absenteeism fall data, as it was pulled fall 2021 and pulled fall 2022, 8 weeks of school is when we pulled the data. That's 40 days, 40 school days. So chronic absenteeism based on that date would be 4 days of excused and unexcused absences. As you can see from the fall 2021 data and compared to this fall, there's a slight increase of 1.2%. I'm not a doctor, but I try to play one at home and on TV. I predict that that's due to the fact that, you know, we're identified and coding absences appropriately. And we are promoting healthy attendance, and we're telling our students and family if they're not feeling well to stay home. And I think that's reflection on this data of you know, excused absences having a slight increase. And again, one thing to kind of keep in mind, if they were sick, you know, 4 or more days when we pulled the data, they would be at this point deemed chronically absent. So as more days are accrued in the school year, you know, they come off that list, right? So if they stop missing after, you know, 4 days of excused absences and we have 60 school days, they come off this chronic absenteeism list. Next slide is our truancy data. Again, this is where our focus is as it pertains to healthy attendance. There's been a drop of 0.5% with all students. Last year when we pulled the data after 8 weeks, we had 300 students who were deemed truant, 2.9% of our overall population. And compared to this year, it's 2.4%, which is a drop of about 51 students and 0.5%. And as you can see, it was a change in all of our student groups in PAUSD, so that's something to celebrate. And I want to say that this work with healthy attendance didn't start, this year. It started last year with our multi-tiered systems of support. And the way we've identified that is for Tier 1, it's 3 or more truancy absences. That's how we're tiering those Tier 1 students. For Tier 2, it's 6 or more truancy absences. And then for Tier 3, it's 9 or more truancy absences. So that's how we've identified in terms of how to provide supports to those students. Kind of a brief overview of what those supports look like. We've implemented a system, an A2A system, where letters are sent home to parents. And, based on the data last year, 45 of students that received the first truancy letter did not move on to the next letter. And as we talk with parents and school community members, that communication, that education, that letter serves is key in terms of them identifying and having conversation with their students why it's important to be in school. Tier 2 is a site conference with the student and parents at the school site. And then Tier 3 is student attendance review board and wraparound services for our, again, students and families that we want to engage back in our school system. To go in more in depth in how those services kind of what it looks like in the school sites, it's better to come from someone who's actually at the school site. So here tonight to kind of go over Tier 1 supports and Tier 2 supports is Assistant Principal at Henry Gunn High School, Courtney Carlo Monio. Did I say that right?
Thank you. So I'm sure while you were all listening, you were wondering what this does look like at a site. And I have to say, over the last 2 years, what it's begun to look like since we've been back in person is a complete transformation from what it was and what I saw when I was a teacher in the classroom at Gunn. So Tier 1 support at the site level is all about establishing a relationship between the school and the student and their family. It's all hands on deck. So school counselors, case managers, safe specialists, and attendance clerks are all working together to call home and gather information about what is impacting this student and their attendance. At this level, we want to highlight what's working for the student and reinforce that, as well as regularly communicate with the family about the absences. So it's really important to me and all my staff who's part of this movement to kind of improve attendance overall. We want the students to notice that we notice when they aren't there. So we're calling home, if we see a kid was out for the whole day, we're checking in like, oh, were they sick? Did you forget to let us know? Like, we notice, we want you here. Moving on to Tier 2. So once a student moves into Tier 2, obviously we see that need for support increase, and we have an on-site meeting with all the stakeholders included. So that's the parent and their guardian, or the parent and the student coming in person, and joining a team featuring the assistant principal, the school counselor, the case manager, and or the SAFE when applicable. So in these meetings, it's really important for me to make sure they're student-centered. And with my leadership, I really take a restorative approach, and it's the student. The student is put on the spot, and I ask them to tell us what's going on. So what classes are you feeling safe in? What parts of school do you like? Are you on a sport? Do you go to a club? What needs are being met and what needs are not being met? So in that meeting, we work as a team, school, site, and family, to come to agreements as part of an attendance contract. And after that meeting, students and their progress continue to be monitored weekly with any improvements being highlighted to their families. We also increase our outreach for absence notification. So we're grateful to have the robocalls but sometimes those aren't as effective because they come in later in the day. So all our students in Tier 2 are actually added to an immediate intervention list, and thanks to the help of my great attendance clerks, they go through that list of students for every period in the school day, and as soon as that student's not marked present, they call home, and we are partnering with parents on the spot to get them back into class. So we're having parents call them, be like, where are you? We're having our attendance clerks go check, are they actually in the room? What's going on? So really at the Tier 2 level, it's all hands on deck, and we want our students to have the agency to tell us what they need. So all of my students at Gunn in Tier 2, like our whole main office staff knows their name, I know their schedule, I talk to their parents regularly. I'm trying to let them know this is a home and they need to come and check in and let us know. Do you need a snack? Do you need water? What do I need to get you so that you can get back to class? And so that's Tier 2. When students do move into Tier 3, in spite of our best efforts to provide them support at the site level, we transition to collaborating with student services to increase that level of intervention.
Thank you, Courtney. This is when I come in. So, really Tier 3 support is, kind of working from what the school site has done to establish relationships, to intervene, and to provide support. It's more wraparound services that we try to provide in this Tier 3 support. And, we could do home visits. We review the forms from the site, and we just try to enforce those things and really just try to establish connection and reconnect the students and families back to the school site. So we hope that students don't get to Tier 3, but when they do, again, it's just that next level intervention where the district office comes in. So next steps, again, increase consistency and implementation of our district-wide attendance system, with A2A, but most importantly with our school sites attendance teams, that we are all streamlining our process, that one school is not different from the other, and that we're providing supports for our students and making connection at a very, very early stage. We want to provide our services, enhanced services to our families as they accrue those days. And the collaboration piece is really important, and that's from school sites, district attendants, myself, and attendance clerks and principals and teachers at the school site. Our PAUSD healthy attendance goal, again, our baseline of last year of, at the end of the year, after 180 school days, we had 1.4 of our students that were deemed truant, meaning they had 18 or more days unexcused. I'm not going to lie, that's a really good number, right? But, like we always say, one student, one family is one too many. So our goal this year is to hopefully, we can have 0, but, again, that's always the goal. But our goal this year is to bring it down to 1.0%, which is 104 students. And then by 2023, 2024, we're under 1% of truant students at Palo Alto Unified School District. Thank you.
Thank you. We have one public comment, and that's from Stephen Davis. Mr. Davis.
So just a mechanical, I think, error. It looks like the models didn't include the drop in enrollment from 2021 to 2022, at least if I did my math right. 2, what this data didn't show, isn't showing, is the huge increase from what numbers were pre-pandemic for the overall student body for 2019. I know no one remembers back then. It was 5.9% and has gone to 9.2%. For students with disabilities, it has gone from 9.5% to 19.3%. I don't know if you saw that number on that big chart with all those other numbers, but the student absenteeism rate for special education students is currently sitting at 19.3%. The disproportionality for students with disabilities has increased from 16.5% to 18.93%. So therefore, that's the overrepresentation of the students with disabilities as a portion of the population that is absent. Similarly, disproportionality, I don't have the old data, but currently is 26.1% of truancy is students with disability. Again, from the last time I came up and spoke here to a couple weeks ago, the college and career readiness for students with disabilities is really bad, and it all ties together. Thank you.
Thank you. Board member comments and questions. Mr. Collins?
Thank you for this. I was really looking forward to this report, and I think chronic absenteeism is a really important issue, and it's one of the top issues that we're working on as a district. So, I think this is in my mind, equal with things like the Every Student Reads initiative in terms of its importance and the commitment that we have to it. You said at the start that the focus here was truancy. And that made perfect sense. That's consistent with the report. My preference would be that we focused on chronic absenteeism and not just on truancy. Truancy is a very important but small part of chronic absenteeism. In particular, for instance, if we hit the goal that was on the final slide, I got my slides out of order now, of reducing, sorry about that, of reducing, what did I do with the final slide? Oh, here it is. No, I got it right here. Reducing from 1.4% to 1%, that represents a reduction of 40 students. On the chronic absenteeism numbers, there were 1,075. So that 40 represents 3.7% of all students who are chronically absent. That strikes me as not nearly impactful enough for, as you said, as your numbers say here, it's 10% of the students are chronically absent. 10%, I mean, that's a really large number. And if you look at the proportionality, at the numbers by subgroup, clearly subgroups that were struggling mightily to deliver the kind of student achievement that we'd like to attain in the district are, wildly disproportionately chronically absent. So I think certainly as far as it goes, it seems appropriate. We have to focus on truancy. Truancy is really important. We should do the things that were described to do truancy. But I would like to see this come back as a more ambitious plan aimed at chronic absenteeism, extending over 3 years, just the way ESRI extends over 3 years, including root cause analysis of why we have, including some kind of data-driven analysis of why students are chronically absent, and trying to understand, kind of better than we have in the past. I've been on the board now 6 years. This is probably the third or fourth time that we've had a presentation on things we're going to do about chronic absenteeism. And there's been lots of investment. There's been student, what do we call those, family engagement programs for years. Big investments, to whole departments created specifically to go at that. Yet chronic absenteeism has gone up, not down. Now that's related to the pandemic, of course. But it just doesn't seem to me that we're moving in the right direction, and this plan didn't give me confidence that we were going to see chronic absenteeism, which I think is the big prize here, kind of move in the direction that I'd like to see it move, which is substantially downward. So, again, as far as the focus on chronic, you stated very clearly at the start that the focus was truancy, and I think as far as that goes, this seems spot on and appropriate. So it's not a criticism of what was presented, but it's a request that we expand the scope of what we're trying to do and create an initiative equal to the importance of the problem, and try to put an initiative in place that can substantially reduce chronic absenteeism over the next 3 years.
So I'd like to hear staff respond to that point about where we are on chronic absenteeism and how you think about the relative importance of the goals and so forth.
All valid points, also all discussed. So what you see is intentional, but I'm also hearing what's being said. I'll be personal for a second. Last year I missed 10 days. That's 10 more days than I'd missed in the previous 5 years. And it was because of COVID and rules. I was sitting at home feeling perfectly healthy, but a stick was telling me I wasn't, and I had to stay home. And what we're really talking about here is, we were very intentional about not just saying attendance, but to say healthy attendance. We have made a big push about if you're not healthy, stay home. Even when in the past, I'm just going to go back a little bit in the Wayback Machine, I would have told my kids, look, you're going to have a runny nose at home, just go have a runny nose at school. It was a different time, right? Now, that's irresponsible to send kids sick. So the healthy part is important, and that's why you saw the focus tonight on truancy, is because you're healthy and you're choosing not to be here. It doesn't change the stats that we let off with tonight, that if you miss a certain number of days, there are negative consequences. Those are statistically true, healthy or not healthy. When you miss, those things are true. So I'm happy to bring this back, probably not the next meeting, but spend a little time on it and do that. But I think I'm explaining something you already pretty much picked up on, as that was the intent and the focus. So happy to come back. Just a reminder that the rules in place, and for good reason, really inflated numbers in a way that students and families that had never been chronically absent were. So again, I think you all understand that, but that was the thinking behind it.
That makes sense. I'll just continue that for a second. I think it would be helpful maybe to have a kind of concept of headroom here. In other words, how much space is there to improve in the area of chronic absenteeism, given the fact that we don't want students to come to school sick? What percentage of the chronic absenteeism that we're seeing is what we regard as sort of regrettable but necessary absenteeism versus what can be recaptured through mitigation? If we have a high level, and maybe we shouldn't use recent history as a guide, but if we do have a high level of what we regard as necessary absenteeism, maybe we need to look at how to mitigate the consequences of that for students, right? Because that's presumably not a law of physics that being absent means that you suffer the kinds of negative consequences that we're seeing. So I think bringing it back would make sense, and those are a couple of suggestions about how we might approach the problem that I think would help us understand, help the board understand. Mr. Branza.
Thank you for this report. Just two things come to mind. One, and you touched on it a little bit, looking at the reasons for the absence, not just is it COVID or is it not COVID, but if some kids have real anxiety about being in school, or if they're not feeling connected at school, right? Those are solved by solving the lack of connectedness and the lack of welcomeness at school, right? So I appreciate that looking at those things as well. And the other is just, it looks like, and especially what you said, having experience at Gunn, that you are creating practices that really weren't in place before at the same level. And to me, that's what the work is, right? And if you get these practices in place and these systems in place, so you've got your tier 1, 2, and 3, you've got certain kids that get a call right away, you're working with families with the safe specialists or whoever, is partnering. I see in the long run that being just a routine that's in place, and no longer is that a top level goal of ours. It's just a practice in our district, and we really like the direction that it's gone and feel like it's really effective. So thank you for putting those systems in place, and I look forward to seeing continued improvement.
Ms. Latimer.
Yeah, I appreciated Mr. Dauber's comments, and I wanted to piggyback on them because one thing that has come up a lot this year that I've heard from a lot of parents that I think is a COVID-related thing is because kids are out for longer when they're out, they're missing more, I would say, summative events that can't be retaken the same way a test can be retaken. So they're missing summative discussions, they're missing participation in PE, things like this that are really can impact their grades. And I get the sense that, as with everything, this is sort of, we're sort of learning how to repair, we're repairing the bike while we're riding it. And this is a place I think where we would benefit from some consistency or maybe some help at the district level to sites around what's sort of the system for this, right? If kids out 10 days and they miss an hour and a half summative discussion, what do we do? What are we doing with that? And I think some teachers are handling it great. This is not to say that this isn't happening and that staff isn't being really mindful of this, but I do think that maybe we could, when we're talking about systems and assuming that we may be living in a world where kids are out for 10 days for a while, we may need to look at if we need to provide a little more help to help alleviate some of the consequences that come from missing lots of days of school.
Other comments, questions? I'll just make one more comment about this. Sometimes we spend time fixing problems, to use a phrase from Dr. Austin, on the back end that we are ourselves contributing to on the front end. And this reminds me of both of the series of challenge success surveys that were done in our high schools several years ago, where there were very high rates of students reporting that they miss school in order to do homework so that they wouldn't arrive at school with their homework undone, or miss school because they stayed up so late doing their homework that they couldn't get up in the morning to go to school. And so they were using absenteeism as a coping strategy for managing excessively high homework loads. And so I think that's yet another reason why, it's important to kind of think about overall student well-being and the ways that we're affecting that, so that we don't treat this, absenteeism as something that's kind of happening externally and that we have to simply respond to. We have some levers that we can pull directly to affect that. So I'll hope that you'll consider that data, and you'll find it in the challenge success surveys. Okay. Anything else on this topic? Okay, thank you so much for that presentation, and we look forward to seeing you again. Next item on our agenda is item 8, information items. So these are items that where information is provided in the board packet, but we don't hear staff presentations and we don't discuss each item unless either there's a public comment or board members want to discuss them. We do have public comment, I believe, on one of these items. That's item 8A, the Every Student Reads Initiative. And that's Stephen Davis. Mr. Davis.
Thank you. Sorry, I don't have the chart here. I kind of did the math on the underperforming students for the students with disabilities under the Every Student's Read initiative. And I want to share some of those numbers with you. Unfortunately, you guys didn't include the populations of the students, so I'm assuming the ratio of special ed students to general ed are the same as they are overall. This may not be true for K through 5-ish. Students with disabilities make up 12% of the students one year behind. They make up 39% of the students who are 2 years behind. They make up 49-ish% of the students 3 or more years behind. This is not something that is a 5% or a 3% marginal problem. This is something that needs a more serious look. And then secondly, if you will forgive me, and I won't run over time, I realized I overran my numbers with you before. The disproportionality was there are 10.2% of our students are students with disability. They make up 18.93% of our absentee students. And again, 10.2% of our student body and 26.1% of our truant students. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. And I appreciate hearing data, and I appreciate folks in the community looking to crunch data. Before I joined the board, I also had a lot of interest in getting data from the district, and I found the district quite responsive in providing, more detail when it was useful, beyond what was published, say, in PDFs or whatever. When they weren't enthusiastic about that, I found the Public Records Act a useful means of extracting information. So I don't think that would be probably necessary for the current administration. But I really encourage you, if you find that you're facing obstacles, getting access to data to do computations, to approach staff, and I'm sure that they would be responsive to that, because I think it's a contribution to have folks in the community giving their own perspective on the data that we all are trying to make sense of. Any board member comments or questions on any of these information items? Okay, so let's move on then to item number 9, board operations. Any comments on board operations from board members? Mr. Branza.
I've got my staff member I want to uplift that I try to at every board meeting, and this time it is Lisa Hall at Gunn for pulling off an amazing Spirit Week there, which I was sad to miss air bands, but I heard was tremendous, just like Pally's was. So thank you, Lisa Hall, for every year stepping up and doing that.
Absolutely. Mr. Durant.
Committee report from BPRC. We continue to be very efficient in moving through our backlog, and we've moved through our backlog. We had a fairly robust discussion on the matrix at the last meeting about a dyslexia policy that had been drafted at one point in time, and questions that as we have during board meetings as well about action or discussions the board has taken in the past that may or may not have been institutionalized, and then we are left as a current board or committee work to try and suss out what the board meant. So the board will likely see something on the dyslexia policy, whether it's up for discussion or a recommendation or a non-recommendation from BPRC. It's unknown, but that is a discussion that's being had by the committee about whether the board has taken action in the past regarding a policy, and then of course looking at what CSBA has coming down the pipelines and what the state guidelines are.
Anybody else? Okay, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.